Yes.
7 o'clock, the meeting will come to order. I'm Grace Lesbrance, Cascade Township Supervisor. Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Trustee Nordhook.
Here.
Trustee McDonald.
Here.
Supervisor Lesbrance.
Here,
Treasurer Pierce.
Here.
Trustee Castle.
Here.
Trustee Shipley.
Present.
And Clerk Slater.
please rise if possible for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
And
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Trustee Norfolk?
I'd like to amend the agenda to include an RFP for township engineer. We had that in our last meeting where a request was made, I think, believe by you to add it to this meeting. And it's not on here.
Discussion or a motion to approve? Is there a discussion or motion?
I'll make a motion to include it. It's one of these, one of the subjects that we continue to talk about. So it makes sense.
Second.
So that's a motion by trustee Nordhook, supported by, no, sorry, a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee Nordhook to approve tonight's agenda with the amendment that a request for proposals for engineering will be added, which would be item 037-2022 at the end of new business. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We have no presentations this evening, so now is the time for public comments. This is the time to comment on anything on tonight's agenda, and we'll have another public comment period after we finish conducting tonight's business. That is the time to comment on anything, agenda related or not. If you're able, please come to the podium, state your name and address for record keeping, and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Welcome, Ms. Taylor.
Hi, I'm Kathy Taylor. I live at 6027 Champagne Court. I'm here just for one simple reason. My husband and I are sort of an ad hoc pathways committee. But I just wanted to talk about the fact that the township, we've been riding around and looking at things, and we have a trail that we spend a lot of money on that goes nowhere. We almost spent a lot of money on a bridge to go nowhere. And there's a proposal to put a bridge over the Thornapple that, in our opinion, having checked that whole area out, has nowhere to go on either side. I don't know how that's going to happen. Well, it'd be exciting, at any rate, I just wanted to urge you to spend or look at where you can find more money to repair the existing trails. When these were put in originally 25 years ago, the big hype was bike paths. Well, they're okay now, the original trails for walking or running or something, but if you're riding a bike on the parts that haven't been repaired, look out. If you're not watching where you're going, you could really get thrown off of some of these, and there's a lot of gravel and you skid, and just, you have to literally ride and watch where your tires are going on these, to avoid having an accident. One other thing I just wanted to mention, I want to read just one little thing here I have. This was regarding Ada. It said, this was a ZZM 13 article just a few weeks ago. Recreation improvements are a major emphasis for the township. Feedback from the community during previous master plans showed people wanted trails, parks, and recreation. So the township, this is Ada, is putting their money where their community asked for it. This year, they're going to spend $4 million putting a trail down the entire length of Pettus. We've been out there. We've seen it all marked off. They're getting ready. And we plan to spend another $15 million in the next 3 years on our trail system. I just want to urge, I think, before we start looking at new trails and other trails, we should consider the fact that we're letting the old ones fall apart. Always looking for new things and failing to maintain the old is kind of a wasteful philosophy to me. And so anyway, that's all. I just wanted to urge the township to see if they can find more money to repair these trails before we start looking at putting more in.
Thank you.
Hi, guys. I'm Chris Taylor. I live at the same address as Kathy. I just want to dovetail on this a little bit. And Kathy's absolutely right. We go up and down all the trails of our wonderful community. And the hardest thing is to get by the gravel, the rocks, the roots that are coming up through the pavement. And it in many parts is quite dangerous. I had a committee meeting with myself last night. And I'm hoping that I can have a whole committee surrounding my thoughts so that we can convey them back to you. But I have a couple recommendations right off the bat. Again, dovetailing with what Kathy said. Taking Cascade, that trail's been there probably 25 years. It's the oldest, one of the original oldies. Here's how I present it. Cascade path, if you want to repair it, and we've talked about this, do it in big chunks. Don't piecemeal it. The Cascade pathway from the east entrance of Manchester west to Hall Street should all be replaced. From Montreux, the entrance of Montreux, going east to the village should all be replaced. There's just one section there that has been done, very small. The other thing that I wanted to identify is the dead trees that hang over the trail. Sometimes Kathy and I are scared to drive our car in that lane because there's some big dead oaks that hang over the street, the trail, and this is intermittent. If you go down Burton, Cascade, any of our old trails, any of the trails. And I would just like this group to be mindful of the fact that God forbid, one of these branches should fall on a citizen and we got a lawsuit. Don't need that. Really don't. So I'd love to see, however that would work with grounds and maintenance, go along, identify and remove those hazards. One final comment. This has nothing to do with the trails. There's a home on Cascade at the address of 8064. It looks like a used car lot junkyard. I counted the cars coming in here and trucks, cars and equipment, about a dozen there. I used to call Stephanie Fast. I don't even know if she works here anymore. And there's an ordinance, I understand, against having this type of clutter on personal property. So I would love someone to check it out and see if they're not in fact violating this ordinance. So those are the three things I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Manager Swayze, that came up before. What's this? Do you know the house Mr. Taylor's referencing? I think I do.
I believe I do, yeah, but I will forward it to Madison in the morning and she can go check it out.
Off the top of your head though, does that? Do you have does anything about our ordinance stand out as, yes, we can, no, we can't? We've looked at this.
So the primary thing would be whether or not the vehicles are operating and licensed. So a lot of times that ordinance focuses specifically on what we call junk vehicles. Either they're not licensed properly, they don't have a license plate or the tags haven't been renewed, or they're not operational. So our ordinance, typically that's the level at which we can take action on the vehicles. As far as the other junk, clutter, that type of stuff, I don't recall it enough to know whether or not it'd be in violation or not.
Do you recall if that house, that particular address has come up complaints? I think it has.
I don't know.
Okay. We'll get back to you. Not the first time that one's come up, and good comments about the pathways. Any other public comments? Mr. Whitley? We all enjoyed your
Oh, I'm glad someone enjoyed it.
your support of Fire Station number 1.
And I'll speak later, but Chuck Whitley, 5030 Sequoia. As far as the pathway over the river by the dam there, just looking at it, it is just a hazardous place. And so, it may not connect directly to a bike path or whatever, but cleaning that up, I think, under whatever umbrella is required, I think that would be a service to any children or anything that, dare try to cross that area with the very, very narrow, walkways on that. I'm all for doing something to clean that up, even though I do not live there and, would very rarely, need to walk there. It is just, it's pretty obvious that it needs some help.
Thank you. Manager Swayze and I actually met last week with the Kent County Road Commission about that bridge over the Thornapple on Cascade Road for pedestrians and bikers. And we should hear more details from them soon, but it was a really good meeting and pretty optimistic, very doable. So it seems like we're all on the same page as far as pathways, I think.
I personally went into the office and asked about that house. And they just passed me off and said, well, the guy's a collector and he can get away with it because it's a collection. I don't think so. The ordinance says something, it has to be behind the front of the garage to be stored. He's storing all kinds of stuff out. He's got them clear out to the street now. And it's got to be checked up on. Don't pass it off this time.
And Manager Swayze, who is our new enforcement officer?
Her name is Madison Smith Jacoby. So technically her title is zoning administrator, but part of the responsibilities include administrating the zoning ordinance as well as the general ordinances. So we'll make sure to get here to a meeting soon to introduce her to everybody. But she's been on several site visits already, and it looks like she's got at least one more for tomorrow.
She's got one for tomorrow. And then let's get an update on, you don't have to go into the specific address, but what parts of our ordinance would apply or wouldn't for whatever reasons at the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Thanks. Anyone else wishing to comment in person or virtually?
If any of our Zoom participants would like to participate in this public comment, please raise your hand. I did notice that someone had raised their hand, but they took it down. So I'm going to wait a moment. It doesn't look like a person wants to speak. Supervisor.
Thank you. Article 6, approval of the consent agenda. Is there discussion or a motion?
I got discussion. The liquor license transfer, is that the Grand Plaza Hotel?
That is.
Okay, well, at least they're staying in business and that's good.
Yep, and they've been doing a huge renovation project there.
I
And
noticed that.
inspectors that have been inspected it have been very complimentary on the professionalism and the design. So hoping that will become a jewel of the township again.
Good. And I also see that we've got more community education requests, and I'm always for that. So I think that's good. That seems as though every meeting we have a couple people going off to get more educated. Good deal. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve.
Support.
It's a motion by trustee Kessel, supported by trustee Shipley to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Article 8, unfinished business. This would be item 034-2022. Part A, a resolution establishing the Forensic Analysis Recommendations Implementation Committee, ad hoc, and also Part B, appointments thereto. This is a follow-up after our last meeting when we received the findings for the forensic audit. It contained 10 important recommendations, and I think that this board has a fiduciary responsibility to address those recommendations and the detailed analysis that came with them. This ad hoc committee, as proposed, will work with staff, legal counsel, and the auditors as necessary to do this. And also then will bring its findings and the proposed recommendations back to this board for review and approval. The committee is purposely narrow in scope and duration. It naturally expires September 1st, and it is limited to, its purview is limited to the issues raised in the forensic audit. Normally, this matter would be referred to the Personnel Finance Committee as it sits squarely within its purview. But without that committee in place, the only other committee we have right now is the governance subcommittee. And that lacks the authority under our own policy, which I have copies here if anyone would like to look at that, lacks the authority to hear these specific issues. So I think implementing this committee, as well as the 3 appointments, which include the township supervisor, myself as the chief elected officer of this township, Treasurer Pierce, and also trustee Timmy Nordhook, will give the most timely and efficient way to implement these much needed recommendations. Along with the creation of this committee, I would also say, Manager Swayze, I would like you to prepare for this board, also whatever response or comments you have to the issues raised in the forensic audit. So that will help the committee and also the entire board stay fully informed. With that, is there a discussion or a
I
motion?
got discussion. This directly affects us taxpayers. And it's imperative that we address these concerns of the forensic analysis as quickly as possible. And by September 1st, that sounds like that's a quick addressing. I like the fact that our treasurer is involved because he knows where the pennies and nickels go. And I like the fact that a new committee will be solely focused on this instead of a multitude of other things. As a former member of the infrastructure committee, I know that we had a lot of stuff dumped in on the infrastructure committee because we were available. And I think that it's imperative that this committee act on its own and that you have quality people like Treasurer Pierce on that committee. And so with that, I would make a motion to go forward with the committee and implement the committee.
Trustee McDonald?
Yeah, I agree with John, and I think this is clearly a step in the right direction, but I think it needs to go further. I totally agree with the transparency and responsibility, but I also think we need more accountability. And we all voted for the forensic audit, and we all voted for spending $40,000 for this. We got 10 recommendations, but I don't think it should be in the hands of a select committee. I think the entire board needs to be responsible. And I think we need to make it more transparent to the public. I would like to see, I was thinking about this a lot. I read through it and I really liked it. And I thought, well, you know what we really need is we need the township accountant because they're the most affected, Treasurer Pierce, and probably the township manager. Those 3 should create a plan, a concrete plan, a timeline plan. And the way I see the timeline plan is we had 10 recommendations, a high priority, middle priority, and low priority. You have the 10 recommendations. We need to know the resources who are going to work on each of those. We need to see the actions such as create a policy, such as correct the database because we have multiple vendor addresses, for example. And we need to have a projected completion date and then an actual completion date for each one. And then I think one of those, at least at every township board meeting, or maybe just the last meeting of the month, we should have a status report. Is how are we on recommendation number 1? How are we in recommendation number 2? Where do we stand on recommendation number 3? What are the actions that have been taken? But I think we all need to be involved because I voted for this too, and I'd like to be involved. So all of us should be involved instead of just 3 people. So, if we have this report at the last board meeting of every month on the status of where we're at with each of the 10 recommendations, then it's open to the public, it's transparent to the public. They see all the discussions, they see what's been done, and we have a report, a written document. And if each of us has ideas that we want to submit to the township accountant, to Treasurer Pierce, and to the township manager, we can send those in a document or even an email, and they can affix it as a footnote. So everything is transparent, everything is in the report. It involves all of us, and we all become responsible. And even more so, we have accountability because now we have a team that has to create the plan and report on the plan back to us. So as I thought through this, I just thought, rather than have a select committee, all of us should be responsible. And that's why I would rather see all of us be responsible and have a report at the end of every month on where we're at with a plan. rather than just put it in the hands of 3 people.
I agree with you as far as having a completely open and transparent process. It's just a hard way to balance being efficient. So there's a lot to discuss that will be under your scenario. That'll be public at every meeting. The specifics and the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, but I think,
And
If-
then also, the way you recommend it, Treasurer Pierce with our inside accountant and manager is inappropriate. We need, the chief elected official needs to be involved in that. And also, so that you're essentially created a second committee with Treasurer Pierce, the manager and the accountant.
well, you
which
could
is
be on it, you
which
could be
is
with them as well.
inappropriate with staff. This is a subcommittee for the board. But I agree fully that the entire board should.
Yeah, so I can't support the committee because I think this should be something that's more transparent. And if Grace, if you should be on that with the township accountant and with the township manager and with the treasurer, that's fine. But I think that way we have an actual plan, we have dates, we have actions, and we also see, for example, if legal counsel needs to be involved, that's more money.
They do.
Yeah.
If they do.
Yeah, if they do, because in some of those, like fixing the database, correcting addresses. We don't need legal counsel for that, but where we do, that's gonna be extra cost. And if we have a plan charted out and we see the plan and we go number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and we get a report every month in this board meeting, then everybody sees it. And I would rather do that than a hand-picked select committee.
My only hesitation with that is that you say Treasurer Pierce, the manager and the accountant as the doers, and you can't have you can't have the staff who, I'm not saying anyone did anything wrong, but you can't have it's on the board to investigate it and look at it. So I think that we should do as much, if you want to do it at these bi-weekly, regularly scheduled times meetings, it's okay with me. I don't think it's the most efficient way to do it. And it's all going to be public in details, but you don't have, the whole point is you don't have staff creating the plan and steering the ship with the board reviewing it. You have the board steering the ship and you have the board overseeing staff, which is exactly how we got into that. The lack of oversight and lack of communication by staff is how we got where we are. It sounds like you're handing it right back over to staff to tell us. The whole point is the board needs to steer the ship. The boards are directly accountable to the people. The board runs the show. Staff has a duty to the board.
And that's why I think the whole board should be involved, not just 3.
Treasurer.
If I
Trustee
can,
Shipley?
just to follow up on my comments, I agree with Tom with transparency. I mean, no doubt about it. The problem with what Tom is proposing, and maybe I'm just not understanding it, but it looks like a monster being built. And before I was on the board, before you, and probably before some of these guys, the committee system was made to vet out a lot of the problems and questions and then bring it to the entire board in public, so the public knows what the entire board's decision is. And in my little calendar that's rolling around in my head, it looks like a proposal like what Tom's got is going to take longer than getting a gall dang new fire station. And it may be 2 years, 3 years down the road before we have any resolution to the concerns that the audit brought up.
Actually, John, no, it'd be faster because we have each recommendation and they're not laborious. Some are really simple. And then we have and I bet you within 1 week, the next meeting, Ben could come back with a plan, or I could even.
Can't have staff do a plan. It's the board steering the ship.
Then the board can go, but I can create a plan. It's pretty simple. And let the people who are gonna do the fixes put a projected completion date and an actual completion date. So we know when each one is being done.
The people who are going to do the fixes with who are those people?
Well, the staff has to do it.
The staff that is part of the problem.
That's the
They're
whole
not part of the
point.
problem.
I didn't understand the audit. I mean, I understood the audit. I didn't get it. But when I read through it, it seems like it's process. It's procedures that have to be tightened up. Like Tom said, dual numbers for vendors. There wasn't anything in there that appeared to be overt, that was illegal. We just have some procedures that need to be tightened up. And as far as a board, I mean, every board that I've been on, not only this one, but others, the board is approval of the policies. The staff, I think, has to create. The board doesn't create the policies or the procedures. If there's a deficiency, and I think Ben made a comment that there were some good recommendations, that the staff can go back and fix those.
And then report to the committee. Absolutely. I'm not
Re-
saying that
and
we
re-
are doing
and-
the legwork.
and
We're just
report-
overseeing it.
And report to the board what the fixes are. We all received it.
Trustee Kessel, what do you mean you didn't see it?
I didn't see it before the last meeting. I got it the next day at 10:48 in the morning.
Are you aware, though, that there is an electronic record of who it was sent to, who accessed it, and under what email accounts? Because that's independently verifiable.
You can verify it. I didn't get it.
We already did, Trustee Kessel.
No, you didn't.
Yes, we did.
I didn't get it. I got it at
Do you wanna-
10:48. It doesn't matter. I read it. And when I read it, I didn't see anything that really concerned me, except we have some procedures we need to tighten up. And I think the staff can do that.
Trustee Kessel, when you're saying that you didn't receive it until Wednesday, after the meeting, Thursday morning,
10:48, yep.
do you want to go down this road? Because it's,
What difference does it make?
I don't,
Grace?
it credibility, if you're lying.
No, I'm not lying. I didn't get it.
J Kessel at Cascade TWP with the
I
username
did
Kessel,
not get it. I don't know where it is.
Tuesday at
Brian.
4:53 PM.
Brian does not know where it is either. We
Who's-
can't find it.
Really?
You know, it's
Because
just really irrelevant. I think it's
not
do
it
we
really-
want
it
the
is, except
whole
you brought
board-
it up.
Do we want the whole board to be part of this process? Or do we want to put it in the hands of 3 people? And Grace, you fought for a year against committees. You told us how bad committees were, how they weren't transparent, how
Not
things
true.
were.
Only that we needed to be subject to the Open Meetings Act. That's it.
Wait a minute, I
all
have a
four
trustee that's lying to the people right
lying,
now.
publicly lying, and
It
it's
is
documented.
verifiable that he opened that email Tuesday at
Trustee
Kessel,
4:54.
and someone with your name and your email
PM.
address is on your email.
Well,
And you're-
that's fine. I did not get it. and
You
I did
had,
not
somebody
know it.
had to get it at your email address.
I
And the
don't
only
know.
reason it's coming up is because you raised the issue. There's no need to air this dirty laundry, but what an immature and dishonest response. And you're the person, Trustee Kessel, who served as chair of the Personnel Finance
So
Committee.
what?
Chair of the Personnel Finance Committee,
So what?
you're the chair of the committee.
So
On
what?
your watch, all this stuff happens.
So-
And isn't it convenient that all of a sudden you
Approve the
didn't,
budget.
you
The
didn't,
board approves the budget.
budget has nothing to do with
Yes,
this.
it does.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
No, it
If they're
doesn't.
spending outside of the budget, it gets brought up to the committee.
Can we get back onto the topic because
Except it's apples and oranges. Ms. McHale, we'd
Well,
love to hear from you.
Always.
You are squirming. You two are squirming to try to get away from it.
Michelle McHale, Plant Moran, and did not expect to speak tonight, so I'm in my tennis shoes and unprofessional attire. I was here as a resident at 7275 Burger Drive. So back on topic, just to continue with your thought process, Trustee McDonald. I would agree that with both of you that the board does navigate the ship, leads the ship, but it is up to management to implement the changes and report back to the board on the changes that have been made. I agree with you, and that is typical. What we see is that you have columns of who is responsible, when is it going to be completed, and status updates should be reported to the board. I completely agree with you. I don't necessarily think an ad hoc committee is needed. I think it's important that all board members be aware of the 10 recommendations and the status accordingly. But I think it's very simple. Some of them are very simple and easy to report back.
And maybe it would be efficient, and I'm open to what you guys think, because ideally the whole board does participate in it. It's just a matter of what's a good use of time. Ideally, the whole board shows up and it's under the Open Meetings Act anyway, so the public, it's notified, it's noticed out, so the public, anyone who wants to can attend and is welcome to attend. But this particular issue, so we don't have 4-hour meetings or however long, I don't know. I think it would be helpful to have them at a separate time, Wednesday mornings or so, but ideally 7 people come. Treasurer Pierce? But-
Is it your experience that the legal counsel could produce a lot of the the written documentation we need or the plans?
I don't know that legal counsel is really required in those 10 recommendations that we made.
Well, doing a conflict of interest statement?
Oh, I'm sorry for that one. I'm assuming they're well versed on preparing that for you folks. In fact, I thought you had one. I remember it was mentioned at the board meeting last time, so you probably already have some basics to start with.
We do.
Okay.
I'm
But,
not aware of that.
I've seen it. We used it at the planning commission.
but the status updates could be provided in the board packets. It would be a very quick process unless there are questions regarding particular items.
There will be.
I'm sure.
As far as setting up the separate meeting, you're the supervisor and the chair that you would head it up.
The separate meeting, meaning if it was set at a different time for this particular issue.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just asking, does anyone have an interest in doing it at a separate time without an ad hoc committee? And we'd hope all 7 of us would be here. All right, how about Wednesday mornings? I'll send out a schedule.
And of course, I am available for questions should there be any.
Don't make it 7 o'clock.
No.
And not at 7 a.m.
No. That's a hard no.
Or do we want to just have these every board meeting?
I would do it every other if you were going to do it at the board meeting.
So I have a comment. Would it be simple, say Tom would set it up, he could put it in Excel and make those.
No, you have to allow the people to call the meeting.
We're all
who
gonna
are the
sit
elected
here and
officials.
so we're gonna all sit here and create the Excel spreadsheet?
No, we have agendas. They're quite easy to create, and the chief elected officer of the township will write the agenda and call the meeting at the time with feedback from all of you.
But like I said, and I think from Plant Moran, I'm in agreement. I mean, it can be a pretty simple chart. It can be 1 through 10, resources needed, or the resources needed, township accountant, legal counsel, whatever. Actions,
Yes,
create a policy, fix the database,
correct.
projected completion date, and then we'd put the actual completion date, check that off at the time that it's done.
And memorialize it for the record.
Yeah,
Yes,
and that's pretty simple, straightforward. It
correct.
could be done in a spreadsheet, it could be done in a Word template.
We can provide the spreadsheet that we created so that you can build off of that if you would
Perfect.
like.
And
Just
the
do
more
it.
things you check off, the
Yep.
less time it will take.
And the only
Correct.
question, and I could be wrong here because there's a balance, but the audit wasn't just I don't think Trustee Kessel's summary of the audit is completely accurate because there were some pretty big red flags. And I just want to make sure we've got some accountability and some reasonable changes. And my only hesitation with Trustee Kessel's comments, besides the fact that they're not true, that he did access it and he's for some reason saying he didn't, like a dog, like losing your homework to the dog or something. Other than it, but you seem to
I
be
did
minimum.
not get it and I did not access it.
You did,
And I'm
Trustee
not- I did
Kessel.
not.
Then someone with your name and your email
I
did.
did not get it.
Tuesday at 4:53, but I don't even need to go
Send it
there.
The next day. I got it at 10:48 on Thursday.
It's sad to watch, Trustee Kessel. It's really
I
sad to
don't like
watch.
being called a liar.
I'm just saying someone with your,
It's not
you-
true.
you brought it up. So we'll get
I
third
did not
party.
Get it.
Well, we'll verify that. We'll verify it.
It's been
It-
verified.
It actually has,
Let me just clarify, since I'm in the
which is
technology.
sad to
wait,
watch an elected official lie publicly.
I'm not
He's not
lying
lying.
publicly.
How would you know?
You're lying.
Grace, because I also did not receive it and Mike
How do
Homier.
you know that did you independent?
No,
You don't know
Grace,
that.
may I please
anything.
finish?
Hey, this is such
Look
a
at,
stupid
no,
topic.
look at. Good leadership builds up their team. We don't tear each other down. We don't attack each other. That's just a bit immature. And let's build a team here. My only point is I'm in the technology business and I've seen a lot of things happen. I didn't get the stuff from our legal counsel either, and they admitted it. Now it went to Tom McDonald at Cascade.twp.com, but those are all supposed to be forwarded to my one singular email.
I agree. I'm not
And that
disagreeing
has-
with this.
But that transfer has followed, and I've talked with IT Right, and I've talked with Brian, and I talked with, I think it was Christie and others, that acknowledged that didn't happen. And that could have happened with Jim's as well.
We can verify that independently by the people who have the information. It's easy to do. So we'll look into
But
that.
it's,
Sounds great.
but it's irrelevant. The point is, let's put together the chart. Let's put together the plan with the recommendations.
We're not disagreeing. I think it'd be smart maybe to do it at a separate time. My only concern is that it seems like you and trustee Kessel and clerk Slater did vote against the audit, even though you said we all supported it. She opposed it.
No, I voted for the audit.
You said we all did. I'm just saying clerk Slater voted against doing
Okay,
the audit.
okay.
You and
Majority.
trustee Kessel especially seem to be very interested in just slipping it under the rug and moving on.
No, we're not
I don't-
slipping on the right.
There's a balance.
We don't have a secondary agenda. And when you create committees, they can have secondary agendas. So let's just keep
Exactly,
it.
like how you guys ran it for 12 years.
No.
Without
Grace,
OMA
Grace,
compliance.
let's stop attacking each other. That's not true.
It actually is.
It's a false narrative. Let's all put together a concrete plan. Very simple, very easy to do, and then let's all track it.
With permission, we will send you all the spreadsheet. We will add the columns that we would recommend. You can review it, you can change it, but it will be an Excel spreadsheet that is modifiable. And then you all can agree on those next
That's great.
steps.
That'd be perfect.
Then we'll have I'll call special meetings Wednesday mornings, unless you guys would prefer to have the discussions at regularly scheduled board meetings. I'll defer to you as a group.
I think it's more transparent if we keep it at regularly scheduled meetings. That way everybody sees it.
Everybody can see it, and there should be regular status points. If you want to have this discussion every week, or every other, that's fine with me.
Yeah, I think the point is to have a plan. Then we turn it over to the treasurer and probably the accountant and the township manager to fill in the blanks. Who's going to fix the database? There's going to be a name. We want accountability. Who's going to fix the database, correct the vendor addresses? Who's going to write the policy? If we already have a policy for conflict of interest, then who's going to physically insert that existing policy into the plan? So we see the action.
Mhm.
It's not going to take a lot of time. And that way we have it monitored by all of us. Every meeting or every second meeting.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm curious, did you see any thing concerning in the analysis? As far as staff communication or lack of communication to the board?
We can discuss all that in the plan.
Well, let's discuss it publicly because that's what you're
Right,
referring to.
but let's get the plan and let's focus on the recommendations that Plant Moran did for us and that we spent $40,000 on. Let's not try to add new things into it
Not
here on the
adding new
fly.
things.
Let's go through 1 through 10 and list them out and address them. That's what we should be doing.
And while I'm at the podium, we are updating the draft report as we stated at the last board meeting. And you'll see those additions in red once we complete them. So I just wanted to mention that at this meeting.
Oh, boy.
It's helpful.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick
You can,
specific question? The check register,
the
Is it-
check register, yes.
is it your understanding that only the accountant sees that before it gets approved?
I offhand don't recall the exact of who sees the check register prior to being approved.
Internal controls will tell you to have 2 people. at least.
Typically, yes, I don't recall,
Okay, thank you.
but I also know that the board receives information as well, I believe.
After the fact.
Right.
That'll teach you to come to board meetings.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. So as it stands, there was a motion by trustee Shipley. Discussion. There's still a motion on the table. Without a second, I believe.
I'll second.
So that's a motion. Any further discussion? That's a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee Nordhook, to approve the creation of the ad hoc committee as described in the packet, along with the appointments there too. Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Trustee Kessel,
No.
trustee Shipley,
Yes.
trustee McDonald,
No,
treasurer Pierce,
No,
trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
clerk Slater, no, supervisor Lesbrunz.
Yes. The motion failed, so we will plan on having special board meetings or specifically posted board meetings that will comply with the Open Meetings Act. Article 9, new business, item 035, 2022. Outdoor gathering permit for the Cascade Metro Cruise warm-up.
Thank you. So the Metro Cruise, excuse me, warm-up event this year will be held on Thursday, August 25 at the Thornapple Center. It will be held from 4:30 to 8:30 p.m. Very similar to events in the past. We will have up to 5 food trucks on the site and no sale or distribution of alcohol at the event. We'll have porta-johns and hand washing stations available to the public. We will have some parking on site. We'll have volunteers to help with cleanup and parking and so forth. We do have a band, Soul Syndicate is coming back this year, and they will play from 6 to 8, which is well within the confines of the noise ordinance for the township. The DDA donated $7,000 for the warm-up event. We do anticipate maybe a few businesses sponsoring as well, so there will be no other financial obligations to the township for this event. And, so staff is asking for approval of the outdoor gathering permit.
I make a motion to approve this.
Comment? This is an event that I think is looked forward to, not only by the community, but the surrounding communities. I know it brings a lot of pride out onto the street. I think it's a great idea that we support it again this year.
Was that a second?
Sure, I'll second.
Motion by Clerk Slater, supported by Trustee Shipley to approve the outdoor gathering permit for the Metro Cruise. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Item 036, 2022. Entry sign for the 30th Street Cemetery. Clerk Slater or Ms. Brott, welcome.
Hi. All right, in 2019, the Cascade Township Board approved a project to enlarge the 30th Street Cemetery. This project was completed in 2020. It was determined best to wait before erecting a sign labeling the cemetery similar to the ones at Snow and Whitneyville cemeteries as a capital improvement. After consultation with Building and Ground Supervisor Jim McDonald, it was discovered that due to old graves directly abutting the fence and drives, there really wasn't room to install posts in the ground to anchor a sign over the driveway. We were also limited in height and width to allow equipment and trucks needed for excavation of graves and installing monuments. Clerk Slater then had the idea to use the current fence as a place to install the sign by cutting out part of the fence and making the sign part of that structure. It would not encroach on the graves since it would likely be less than 1 foot wide. Jim McDonald, myself, and Clerk Slater met with 3 different firms at the cemetery to discuss options and design ideas. Attached for your review are the 3 bids we received from Valley City Sign, Grand River Signs, and Patton Monument. The 3 bids we received were from Valley City Sign for $18,436, Grand River Signs for faux stone, $13,719.34, or real stone, $21,563.34, and Patton Monument, not including installation, for $29,875. While the preferred bid, Valley City Signs, is the middle amount of the 3, the lowest bid if you use the real stone from Grand River. This design is the best looking and consistent with the smaller plaque and sign at one of the other drives and the other 2 cemeteries. If the board approves the Valley City Sign bid for $18,436, it will be paid for from the general fund capital improvements. Our recommended action, Clerk Slater's recommended action, is to approve the bid for sign construction from Valley City Signs. Does anyone have any questions?
I just got one. Hey, Sue, did we put money aside a year or 2 ago for this?
We did.
Okay, yeah, are we gonna be using that money or?
I think Manager Swayze can speak to that. It's more than we needed.
So we originally had planned on doing the archway sign over it. And
Okay.
there was, I believe, $35,000 in the project for that. And it's currently mingled in the fund balance, so it'll come out of that, but I won't be using all that money.
Okay, great. So it's not coming out of the general fund. It's already been approved and all that good stuff. Cool, I like that.
I also have a further comment in case any of you are wondering about the right of way. I asked Madison to reach out to Kent County Road Commission, and they looked at the old maps for the pathway, which at that time it would have been cleared with them. So, and I spoke with Tim Hagsma on the phone today, and he said, I have no problem with that because the fence is the right of way edge. And so with that stone sign being there, it's not going to be, it's at most 12 inches wide. So it's not going to be an encroachment. And he said, I have no problem with that. So we have their approval as well.
The only thing I might add is because it's on that hillside there, I know that King County salts and sands that road quite heavily during winter time. If there's some type of a surface covering that can be put on there to protect the masonry work and the bronze, it might pay off in the long run to spend a little bit of more money and put a top coat on that stuff to protect it from the salt and the sand.
Fair point.
Other than that, it's a fine looking sign.
We thought so too. We were very excited about it.
The best of the three.
Once we got them to understand what we were looking for.
Right.
That took some doing.
Make a motion to approve.
Go ahead, John.
It's a motion by trustee Kessel, supported by trustee McDonald to support the sign addition as described in the packet. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 037-2022. This is the addition to tonight's agenda, request for proposals for engineering. Discussion or a motion?
Make a motion, we move forward with an RFP for engineering.
Trustee Shipley, you had a comment?
No, just a comment. I agree with Jim, and I know in conversation with Ben before, we're looking at adding a person to the staff with some engineering experience or background. But we need to have a qualified larger engineering firm that can handle the larger projects. And I think that there's many of them out there, and I think that an RFP is probably the most feasible way to go and absolutely the most transparent.
And we will save hundreds of thousands of dollars a year based on what we're paying our current engineering firm. Is there a second or any more comments?
Second.
I think it's long overdue. That's a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee Nordhook to approve an RFP for engineering. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Ben, let's see that at the next meeting, please. Article 10, items for discussion. Early bird package for Fire Station 1. Manager Swayze?
Great, thank you. So I did put a little memo in the packet regarding this issue and a couple others down here as well. So Nick Balu, who is the project manager from Triangle that will be overseeing the Fire Station #1 project, came and talked to myself and Chief Majors last week and is recommending that the township consider an early bid package for certain items for Fire Station #1. The things that he identified include the roofing package. He's particularly interested in or worried about the insulation for the roofing, but doesn't think the insulation needs to be bid separately. Basically, the whole roofing package needs to be bid so that we can get in line for the roofing installation. The installation, the lead time for that's currently 52 weeks. The lead time for electrical main distribution panel and breakers is 50 to 56 weeks. The lead time for generator is 50 to 60 weeks, and the lead time for the fire alarm control panel is 52 weeks. So they're recommending that the township consider doing an early bid package. It would go through the same process that it would as well. Instead of all of the bids coming back at once to the township board, you'll get a bunch of bids, in the July-August timeframe to consider, and then a bunch of bids in the August-September timeframe to consider. From Triangle's perspective, it won't cost us any more in the Triangle contract. I did talk to Williams about them, and they said that developing 2 bid packages is beyond the scope of their work. So they said that there would be additional cost in there. it's probably going to end up being negligible in a $10 million project, but I just wanted you guys to be aware that it was outside, 2 bid packages was outside of the scope of services from Williams at this point. I also wanted Nick just to double check, if we did an early bid package and then for some reason, decided not to do the fire station project, what would that mean? And he said that they were working to better quantify any cancellation fees that would be associated with equipment orders. The roofing material can obviously be utilized elsewhere and should be refundable. And he just commented that we're essentially just getting our spot in line through the early procurement bid package. So again, if the board is okay considering the early bid package and really isn't something we need to vote on, just kind of need some feedback from you guys, not to give Triangle some direction. It would still be subject to the same process that the full bid package will go through as well.
52 weeks on some of that stuff.
Oh, crap. Based upon, number one, these builders know what the current status is of all the building stuff. So I would say if they recommend that we do an early bid package, then let's do it so that we can quote, get in line. Lord, 52 to 56 weeks.
Are they gonna honor those prices if we get the bids now?
Whenever the bid is the bid, yep, so they have to honor the
Yeah,
prices.
which may be an advantage for us too, with prices still going up.
Yeah. Can we bid the whole thing early?
I mean, we would love to, right? But what will happen is Williams will focus on these items first, and then the bid package will go out, and then Williams will focus on the rest of the items, so.
I recommend that Ben gives them the go ahead and let's get this can kicked down the road because it's getting rusty and full of holes already.
Yep.
And they're very good at identifying critical path items.
Oh,
And,
sure.
and that's really when you look at the scheme of things, the critical path items are the critical ones. So they should definitely be in an early bid package.
And the critical path items are changing too, right? So when we were back in January, February, we were worried about steel, and now we're not worried about steel anymore. These are the things that we're worried about, so. They change on a regular basis too. And it sounds like I have some direction, and I can tell them that we'll do both an early and a regular bid package, and you guys should expect to see bids for the early bid package to consider in the July, August timeframe.
Sooner the better.
Next item, rules for bidding on fire station number 1.
So Triangle, which is our construction management firm that's selected for fire station number 1, has requested clarification on the bidding rules that we put into the RFP for the project. So talking to Brianne Pitchford, to give some context and complete transparency, they have a subsidiary company by the name of IntegraCore Constructors, or IC. It's its own separate company with separate office and field staff. The employees are Triangle employees, but they're leased to IC. From an executive management standpoint, there's some crossover between Triangle and IC, and the ownership is the same. So she mentioned that IntegraCore self-performs on Triangle projects, but they also bid on other general contractor, construction manager projects. And there's a list in the packet of projects that they've worked on in the area in the past couple of years. IC has the capability to self-perform general trades, finish, and rough carpentry, etc. They indicated that they're definitely interested in bidding on the fire station project. Triangle would hold them to the same standard as any other trade partner. They would be expected to competitively bid on the project. Sometimes IC is a low responsive bidder on Triangle work, and sometimes that they are not. So as I mentioned, our initial construction manager request for proposals indicated that the selected construction manager would not be allowed to self-perform the work. And then given the relationship between Triangle and IntegraCore Constructors, I really thought it would further discussion on this issue was warranted with the board. I would note that if they're allowed to work, if they're allowed to bid on any work, the IntegraCore constructors would have to go through a competitive sealed bid process to make sure that it's fair.
What's the difference between back when this first came up over a year ago before we went with Triangle and Williams? We had Progressive and then a subsidiary of Progressive, and the higher the percentage, or the higher the cost, the higher the percentage. So that was kind of a lack of checks and balances. Is there a difference between this setup that would alleviate those concerns?
So I think the business structure of IntegraCore constructors is different than when we were looking at the Township Hall project. And then for the Township Hall project, so if you're looking at different roles, right? So right now we have Williams as the architect, we have Triangle as the construction manager, and then we have all of the companies that will be bidding on the work. But every time we get a bill, we pay the construction manager, we pay Triangle, right? So if they hire Joe's Electric to come in and do $100,000 of electric work, we pay Triangle, Triangle pays the electric contractor, and then Triangle holds the contract, so they're responsible for those issues, right? So if you take that same model and move it to the Township Hall project, for the Township Hall project, Progressive AE was the architect. The subsidiary of Progressive AE was the construction manager, and then they were holding all of the contracts. So there's a difference in that. The issue with Township Hall was that both the architect and the construction manager were Progressive AE. In this case, we do have a separate construction manager, but they're asking for their subsidiary to be able to bid on some of those bid packages. They can't do all the work, but it doesn't sound like they do concrete, they have landscaping, but there's some things that they want. They're asking if they would be able to bid on. I mean, the other issue right now too is that, the market is tight. Having additional bidders isn't necessarily a bad thing.
And they're sealed, so in theory, they would be anonymous.
Yeah, I talked to Brianne about that. She doesn't anticipate any sole sourced bid packages. I think there's over 100 bid packages for this process. So everything would have to be sealed, especially if IntegraCore was going to bid on it.
Who's opening the bids?
What's that?
Who's opening the bids?
Construction manager would open the bids.
It didn't work out well for us when it was progressive. So I have some reservations.
Can we see afterwards what the bids or no?
Yeah, so when you guys consider the bids, you will get all of the information. So you'll get, all the details, what the bids were, what the lowest bid is, if for some reason they're recommending not going with the lowest bidder, what the reasoning is behind that. You'll have access to all of that data.
And certainly, I think that if there was a question, we could have one of us in the bid opening meeting. So as Ben said, with the tightness of availability of contractors, I think that it might be wise of us to say, yeah, okay, go ahead and bid, because we still have the option to say no, niet, nine, whatever.
But they're the constructors, right? We still keep Triangle as our contractor, just to be clear. Just to be clear.
Triangle is the construction manager, right? So if the board chose not to let IntegraCore bid on it, then they're just managing all the, they basically they're construction manager and they subcontract out 100% of the work.
Yeah, but they're our contractor. So to speak. Yeah. And I just wanted to make sure Jim or John may have misspoke. There's a difference between constructor and contractor. And I think what he meant is there's a big competition for constructors. So adding IntegraCore as a constructor is probably a good thing.
That's what I was trying to say.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom.
Additional comments, dissent? Sounds like a good plan.
All right, thank you.
Kent County American Rescue Plan Act.
So Kent County's launched a website to assist in determining how the county ARPA funds should be allocated. It is kentcountyarpa.com. And then according to their website, Kent County has identified the following key areas for ARPA funds: community health, quality of life, infrastructure, economic information, innovations and workforce development, and improving government operations, specifically Kent County government operations. So there's currently a priorities and ideas survey available on the website that's open until June 4th. And the county is also accepting ARPA fund proposals until Friday, July 15th. So their schedule has June 8th through the 11th as a community forums. Their survey is going to close on June 24th. July 25th, a proposal form closes. June, July, and August, the ideas and proposals are reviewed by their internal team and then submitted to their Board of Commissioners for review and consideration. And then in July, August, September, the Board of Commissioners will begin appropriating ARPA funds for the project. So the Governance Committee began the conversation at their May meeting, identified a couple projects the board may want to consider submitting, but thought the conversation with the full board was warranted. The ideas included the broadband expansion for the Alaska Ridge neighborhood. That's still the only neighborhood in the township where we've actually identified a neighborhood with broadband deficiencies. We have identified or heard from individual houses, but in those areas, the infrastructure is available in their house. It's just cost prohibitive to extend it to their home because they have half-mile driveways or whatnot. So, but as far as availability of broadband in a neighborhood, Alaska Ridge is still the only neighborhood that we've identified. And then there's been the conversation about pedestrian facilities on the Cascade Road Bridge, specifically trying to enhance the pedestrians' ability to cross that safely by creating a separated pedestrian facility. Committee also discussed PFAS remediation costs, but thought that was a conversation best handled through other legal avenues, given Kent County's ownership of the airport property. So with that, I'm really just looking for a discussion from the board on what types of things, given the key areas that they identified that we might want to consider applying for. My anticipated process then would be to take the discussion we have, turn those into proposals for the board to review at the second meeting in June and the first meeting in July, and then we get those submitted before the July 15th deadline.
Since we have money in a millage for pathways, the Taylors are gone now, but could we apply for monies to repair and replace pathways, even though we have a millage? Would that be acceptable?
So I guess my answer to that would be we can apply for anything, right? But given the key areas, quality of life, long-term quality of life improvements, I think that they would be less inclined to approve the maintenance of pathways and more inclined if there was a new pathway facility that we wanted to propose.
Ben, do you have any idea how much money we're talking about to the township?
So they aren't doing it like they did with the CARES Act fund. So with the CARES Act funds, they basically divided it up they divided up a portion of the money to all the municipalities based on population and a couple other things. In this case, they're just looking for projects. So there's no pot of money that's allocated for the township to consider. That being said, I'm sure they're interested in spreading the wealth to be. The overall pot of money, I believe, is $152 million.
Chunk of change.
What about John's idea that he had a few meetings ago about trees, planting trees, and would that qualify?
Same answer. You could ask for whatever you want. You just have to be smart about what you're likely to get.
I think if we put together a plan, again, quality of life.
The people out here have repeatedly said that they like the trees, they like the pathways. That's certainly quality of life in my book. And if we could somehow start replacing some of the veteran trees that are dying on an annual basis, that would maybe not today be better quality of life, but tomorrow and in the year after. And I know that Kent County's got some rules where you can and how far you can be from the street.
Manager Swayze, do you have any feel for if we did add pathways, trees, that kind of stuff, quality of life? Does that lessen are we more likely to, does that lessen our, the county's ultimately choosing what specific, this is project specific, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they've indicated that they're geared towards broadband, expanding broadband. But do you think that?
So they specifically mentioned broadband in one of the areas.
Which would be wonderful if they picked up that cost rather than 200,000 plus at the township to extend that to Alaska Ridge. Do you think adding the other things that were brought up lessens or muddies the water as far as what we may get? What's our greatest bang for a buck as far as what the county.
Yeah, so I think you can make an argument either way, right? I don't think that but knowing the people that are going to be evaluating, I don't think they're going to say, that, oh, Cascade Township asked for too much, so we're not going to give them anything. They're going to say that, yep, Cascade, asked for these 3 or 4 projects, but this is very clearly the one that meets our guidelines, and this is the one that we're going to support.
Beggars can't be choosers.
Any other comments or additional feedback you're looking for, Manager Swayze?
This time, like I said, I can bring back some project proposals and, given the board an opportunity to actually approve submitting those then. And maybe I'll do a little bit of background research in the meantime and, maybe find somebody at the county I can pick their brain and see if, some of the ideas they think will float or not.
Great, thank you.
You said that you're already working with the county on pedestrian facilities on the bridge, so that may tie in very nicely as well.
Item 4, project issues up. Oh, I'm sorry, Trustee Norton, did you have?
I'm
any?
just gonna ask, the bridges over 96, county have anything to do with those? Are those county bridges like Burton Street Bridge or Whitneyville Bridge?
Any of the bridges over 96 are owned. The bridges are owned by MDOT. The approaches are owned by Kent County.
Okay, thank you. So I was kind of going there, but not gonna work.
Project issues updates, although none are listed specifically.
All right, so we got a bunch I wanted to give you guys some updates on tonight. So the Planning Commission has been working on the Wormies composting issue. And they are set to, I believe they either have or are setting a public hearing to consider a amendment to the zoning ordinance to allow some minimal composting as a special use permit. So in the meantime, we had a discussion today with our attorneys about the process. The company that started this whole conversation has made a request to the township to be able to bring in some material to make sure that their specimen don't die. They claim at one point they had 5 million worms there, and they have about 2 million right now. So we had a good discussion with legal about that today. As soon as that kind of response is available, I'll make sure everybody gets it so you guys know what's going on. But the general way the process will go now is that the Planning Commission will consider an update to the zoning ordinance to allow this use through a special use permit. They have a public hearing, but that all ordinance changes are a recommendation to the township board. So we will then eventually have that in front of the township board as well for the board to consider. The Planning Commission considers it a July meeting. It'll probably be an August meeting before it comes in front of the township board. Egypt Creek, we got our long awaited letter out to the Egypt Creek regarding some of the issues that we're having at that facility that the residents have brought up. It was well received, at least by their attorney. And we actually have a site review with them next Tuesday in order to review the 7 points that we laid out in our letter and to make sure that they're in compliance with all of those items. So that is moving along swiftly. Trustee Nordic and I were at the Round Hill Committee again today. They are getting ready to make their progress report to the township board, but wanted us to report that since the timeline for them to get their stuff done went through June, they're originally thinking that they would come to the June 22nd board meeting, but there's still some things they want to button up. So they'll be done with their work by the end of June, but the report will come to the board at the July 13th meeting. So the first meeting in July. And Ralph Moxley and Alan Rowland from the committee will be coming to present to the board on the recommendations that are coming from that committee. We also had myself, Supervisor Les Brents, Parks Chair Ginny Wanty, had a really good conversation with Dr. Keys from Cornerstone regarding the deer population issue in Burton Park. Prior to being a professor at Cornerstone, a professor of biology and something else and something else and something else, He was also the executive director of the Blandford Nature Center. And him and his students have done deer population analysis and helped with herd control projects, both at Blandford Nature Center, Ottawa County Parks, and Kent County Parks. So they have some good experience there. Dr. Keys has graciously volunteered his time and his students' time to do a deer population survey in Burton Park. Because of the migration patterns, they won't really be able to do it until rutting season, which is August through December. So we'll do the population analysis there. And then from that, we'll figure out what type of herd management opportunities are available for us to consider in 2023. So very happy. Dr. Keys was willing to volunteer him and his students' time. It'll cost us, the final cost will be a couple packages of AA lithium batteries because they put out trail cams to help monitor the population, and they go through batteries pretty fast. I think he indicated when they were doing the Ottawa County study, they took 30,000 images. So looking forward to that. That's moving forward slowly but surely. And then we have gotten a couple complaints about the drive going out to McGraw Park. That is the park that we actually co-own with Forest Hill Schools. So we own the drive and a majority of the undeveloped area and the pathway that goes along the river. The school district actually owns the boathouse, and the Forest Hills crew team actually practices out of there as well. So I met out there with the road commission. So the issue is the drive goes in, that park is basically a swamp in parts of it. And there's a lot of water that goes over a certain section of the road and washes it out all the time. I met with the Kent County Road Commission engineers out there, and they're willing, even though it's not a public road, they're willing to partner with us on solutions. We'll ultimately have to pay for the solution, but they're willing to help design a bit of it. So we are going to put some millings out there and get it smoothed out just as a short-term solution, because the crew team does do summer camps out there, and we want to make sure that everybody that's going out there has safe passage. But ultimately, probably this fall, we'll be coming back to the township board with a solution that involves some culverts and doing some real fixes out there to hopefully solve that problem, and that something that won't wash away every spring. Interestingly enough, when I was talking to Jerry, he said that if it was 100 years ago, simply what we would do is cut down trees and we float them over the road and put all the material on top of that. That provides the flexibility for the water. The water goes under the trees, and he said it's the best way to build roads around there. And there's absolutely no way the state would permit it right now. So we'll probably design something with some culverts and some geotextile fabric to give it some flexibility and make sure that the water doesn't wash it away. So that's an update on some of the projects that are going on.
Article 11, public comments. Comment? Treasurer.
I thought Trustee Nord added something to the agenda.
We covered it.
We did under new business.
The RFP.
No, that's all right.
Thank you,
Public.
Ken.
And we'll have that by the next meeting. Public comments. Anyone's welcome. Any topic is on.
Good evening, Brian Holcomb, 3415 Glenstone Court Southeast. Thank you for updating me on the Egypt Creek. I was going to bring that up. I'd like to bring up finding out about bridges are owned by MDOT and the approaches are owned by Kent County Road Commission. When they put in 36th Street at Thornapple and Thornapple, because as you know, Thornapple zigzags this way and all over the place. It's a T intersection. Coming across on Thornapple after you cross from Thornhills, so you go down the hill, up the hill, you come up to the intersection. That intersection technically only has one lane. And if you get two cars, two trucks, one big truck, you can't turn right. Now, they built an access road to do all that construction in hours. So yes, to redo the bridge, we ought to get on MDOT's list because that bridge would have to be wide. Right now, it's only 2 lanes. So you got no way to get across if you're a pedestrian. It really needs to have 3 lanes minimal, but a quick fix would be to change the intersection. So at least you can have 2 lanes, one to turn right, let the people sit there to turn left. Now, minimal to have at least have a half a dozen cars be able to turn right. That intersection since '04, and I don't know exactly when 36th Street hooked up to it. It was after '04, but that intersection is getting busier and busier and busier. You got FedEx coming in and out of the airport. You got a lot of other freight companies. A lot of people are going using Whitneyville, so they're cutting down 48th Street. They're using that Thornapple. So that intersection, like I said, if you've got two vehicles turning left, nobody can turn right and it just backs up across the bridge. So if we don't get on MDOT, Kent County Road Commission's list, it wouldn't take much to redo that intersection. So at least you could have two lanes. It might be small two lanes, but at least you could have more cars turning right than just sitting there waiting for the light to turn and the cars to turn left. So I'm bringing that up just to make comments to MDOT and to Kent County Road Commission. That intersection, I don't think was ever thought of because back when they put it in, very little traffic. Well, now there's a lot of traffic there. So that needs to be put on the list just so at some point in time we can address it. That's all I got.
Can I ask Mr. Holcomb?
Yes,
Sure.
please.
Have you noticed any changes in the operations of Egypt Creek in the past couple of weeks?
He has cleaned up some in the last few weeks, but you can tell where he has encroached on the wetlands, the floodplain. He's pushed brush and debris up to and including into Turtle Creek. But thankfully, according to the thing that he got, it says he's got to put things back to where it was sometime in 2013 when he purchased it. I also know that he expanded his property on the west side of his property. I'm going to say over 100 feet, but when you guys get out there and take a look, you'll be able to tell. So he's done some things. He can never put back the 150 feet trees. He's just mowed down in the vegetation, which he's less than 50 feet from Turtle Creek, which I understand the setback's 150. So there's a lot of issues that you guys will see when you go out there. So.
Ben, what's the process for, we get issues raised by residents at the township level as our population grows and we have more traffic? So for that intersection, for example, we contact the road commission and what's the steps?
Yeah, so really, even with the MDOT bridges, I typically contact the road commission first, just because they're our good partner. Not to say that we don't have a good partner in MDOT, but MDOT's a pretty big bureaucratic organization, and we've got good relationships with Kent County. So I think I'll just give Wayne a bump and tell him that the comments we got and get some feedback from him on how he sees it.
Thanks. I noticed this week that we had a concerned resident about the intersection of Hall and Cascade, that where all the Forest Hill Central kids going in the mornings to school and coming back. And then we had our additional patrol start at the beginning of June. And twice in the last 2 weeks, there was a sheriff's SUV parked right on the pathway in the mornings when all the kids are driving to school. And then once at the end of the day, of the school day, there was one in the turn lane. So I thought that was nice.
Unmarked.
The high school kids call that a gauntlet.
Mhm.
Once they get on Cascade Road.
It's just tricky what authority we have and what can be done. So it's the more clear it is to residents.
Spike strips.
Yeah. Welcome.
Ken Vandercock, 7200 Layton. I had a little mechanical work done in my house this last week, and I'm gonna have to have the inspectors out. Does the inspecting department, do they have uniforms or shirts? Did you buy shirts when you were buying mugs and everything, or?
They do have uniforms, yes.
They do have uniforms? Who bought the uniforms?
The township, the building department.
The township or the inspection department?
So the inspection department is part of the township, but the funds came out of the inspection department funds.
Out of their funds?
Correct.
Okay.
Are uniforms listed in their job description?
So yes, they are.
So when he
but
comes,
they
he better be wearing a uniform?
should be wearing a uniform, yes. But the details aren't as clear as they are in the fire department policy. So that's probably something we'll have to look at through the process.
But the township is buying uniforms.
Yes.
I think there's a need to clarify how you define uniforms and where the money's coming from. So that'll be one thing that I think we should look at.
Well, we bought a whole River House. Did a whole lot of bidding and stuff. Did we go through River House to buy all these shirts too?
They have at some point, yes.
So that was a three bid process also, or just
Yes.
handed it over to?
No, 3 bids.
Could we see the invoices on that one then?
Sure.
When?
If you come to the office, I can show them to you.
Next meeting?
Sure.
Okay.
Mr. Whitley.
All right, thank you. Chuck Whitley, 5030 Sequoia. I do want to separately thank Scott for reading my letter from a few weeks ago. I was in the air at the time, and I didn't want to wait till my next time I could come here. So that got through, and appreciate that. What I do want to talk about tonight as well, though, is that a few days ago, the water level in the river was, for no apparent reason, reduced on an unscheduled basis. And it kind of brings the thought to me as to what is the communication process where the operator talks to the owner of the dam when events occur. And then also, how can the owner of the dam contact the operator of the dam for updates if, something is noticed on our side? So, was whatever happened the other day properly communicated? Is there, something in place to where there's guidelines that say it should be communicated? And, what kind of happened, and what does this expose us to if we don't have a clear communication priority for when events occur, people get notified and action can be taken?
Let's walk through it, Mr. Swayze.
So Supervisor Lesperance and I, and actually Captain Stevenson, because Chief Majors is deployed right now, actually sat through our emergency action plan exercise with the company this week. So we have a big emergency action plan. It's got all sorts of flow charts on it, and we have to do training once a year in order to maintain our FERC license. So there's definitely processes in place. The event that you're referring to was kind of a double failure. They had both a mechanical failure and a monitoring failure, which is why the water going down wasn't caught earlier than it actually was. But once I got my notification, I pulled out my flow chart and contacted Grace Phillips, who is the regional manager for that, and she went to work, and I think everything was fixed by 9:30 and the water was back up by the morning. So we do have a lot of processes in place. FERC requires us to have all of those.
Okay, so
I think that then for residents who are concerned, and that's very valid concerns, rather than putting it on the township to contact residents or the association, I think you should get a response, but I think the burden should be on the residents to contact the township, expecting an answer.
They did. I heard from a lot of them.
Okay. But no, great question.
okay, yeah, it's an opportunity to make sure that the communication standards are there and that they can be expected to be followed in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments in person or virtually?
If any of our Zoom participants would like to make a comment during this public comment section, please raise your hand. Dial *9 if you are participating via phone, and we'll wait one moment, Supervisor. No one has raised their hand.
Okay. Next up, Article 12, manager comments.
I talked a lot about projects and issues, so I am all set for tonight.
Board comments. Let's let Treasurer Pierce, he's
Go
so,
ahead, Ken.
John, I'd like to see you stand up.
Oh, no, that's okay, Ken.
Two items. I'm not familiar, and I've been on the board 12+ years, of a conflict of interest policy that the board adopted. I'd like to see a copy of that and the date and the board minutes where it was approved. And secondly, in the spirit of full disclosure, I want to disclose that it's my understanding that my spouse has been offered a temporary office position for the work on the election in this year. She worked in the office in 2020 and has worked as a precinct worker and captain prior to that. But if anybody has any issues or concerns or questions, please direct them to the clerk Slater, Deputy Clerk Christie, or the election specialist. Thank you.
thank you. What was your understanding about the conflicts? Because it was my understanding we didn't have one.
I thought Timmy said we didn't have one.
He brought it to, I believe, Manager Swayze and myself, and then I used that for planning commission appointments.
Did they approve it?
The people who were seeking appointment filled it out and returned it, but what do you mean approve? I don't believe anyone has implemented a
So we
policy.
don't have one for the board yet.
That's my understanding. Manager Swayze, is that your understanding?
I don't believe we have a conflict of interest
Thank you.
policy for the board. No.
There's the rules of conduct for the planning commission, and there's conflicts of interest in the planning commission rules of conduct, but it's not for the board.
Thank you.
Do you know in the past if we were in the habit of presenting appointees or potential appointees with conflicts of interest forms to fill out?
I think
you.
this should be done annually for anybody doing business with this township. Any and all employees should file that form every year.
But the board should have it because you can't impose that on an elected official.
Not on the elected officials, you may not, but on the employees and all of our vendors, we can. And most companies do.
And as an
It's just-
elected official, you should want to voluntarily disclose information like that. If your business is doing business with the township, I would think, rather than conceal it.
This is where I get to stand up and thank you guys for coming. Ben, I really enjoyed the update on all these issues that are going on. It sounds like you and the officials are moving forward on them. So that's refreshing that at least the residents will be getting some relief sometime in the near future. And you already answered the one thing about the low river costs. And Supervisor, I'd just like to stress that we move forward with the appointment of the pathway committee that we talked about at the last meeting. Sounds like we got a couple, we're very willing residents chomping at the bit to get involved and make some recommendations to us. That's all I have to say.
Then have all the pathways that were approved for repair been done?
The repair program for 2022 hasn't been developed yet.
I know that Scott Van Salkema talked about pathways that needed repair. And we said that was going to be done this year, right?
Correct,
They're being identified right now.
We typically do the repair work at the end of the summer.
So some of what the Taylors talked about will be included in that repair, could be.
So we've identified both the Cascade Road corridor and the Spalding corridor as the primary areas for work.
Trustee
Just have a
McDonald?
quick question for Ben. This is really a parks question, but do you know the status of the Oak Wilt project in Burton Park? I've hiked there a couple times and I see all of it marked out and the signs up and it's really great. I just wondered what the status was.
Yeah, just remember that we can't do any oak wilt work during.
During the
summer.
season, that's right. You have to wait till after November.
We decided to wait till after November.
That's what I thought.
Because we couldn't actually get anybody to bid on it for the spring because their work was already full.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
we had to negotiate a couple of access agreements with a neighbor and a homeowners association out there. We've got that signed and all that. The contracts have been signed, so we're just waiting for the calendar to flip before that goes.
Yeah, I think it's November 1 to March 31 as they recommended. The only time to do the cutting or else you
Yeah.
attract the parasites.
Yeah. And the contractor hasn't identified exactly when they're going to do it yet. And the way the agreement was written is that they can pick when they want to do it in that time frame, but they can't start and then stop and then start again,
Okay.
right? So I think once they start, they get 2 weeks to complete the project.
That's okay. That makes sense. Great, thanks.
Ginny Wani did a fantastic job on that, and our planning commission has just done a wonderful job stepping up on some really complicated issues, including you, trustee Nordhook.
Well, I just wanted to say that this planning commission has really gone over and above. They've done so much with their committees. They've been meeting several times. Great group. They've done just a great job, and I want to just give them a kudos, so.
Is there a motion or further comments?
I make a motion for adjournment. Seeing as how the business of the board has been concluded on this day, the 8th of June, in God year 2022.
Support.
It's a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee McDonald to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
No, that would be interesting is to see what the county comes back. You ever try getting across it? Because they're the student.